Hi everyone! In last week's video, we drew some dogs together. We did several different types of dogs, and then I asked you to pick one dog in particular and do more of a finished drawing of that. So hopefully you had a chance to do that. Today, I thought we would do a cat. And so here's a few examples of my cat drawings that I've been working on. And we're not going to do different types of cats, even though there are lots of different types of cats. We're just going to spend our time focusing on drawing the main structure of the face. And we're just going to do the head or the face of the cat. So it would be helpful if you had some B pencils to do the shading. Let's get started. So here's one that I was working on, and this is more of a zoom in close-up of the cat's face. Here's a couple other ones that I drew, a little bit smaller and not as close up. And you know, I've really learned some things from trial and error. I've had to practice this a few times, and the things that I learned from trial and error I will share with you as we go along. But we're going to start with the basic frame or the basic structure of the cat's face using basic shapes. So this is what we're going to start with, and I'm going to walk you through it. So we're going to start with an oval, and we want a nice big kind of fat oval like this. So we don't want it too skinny and too long. We want it very close to being a circle. Okay, technically it's an oval, but it's nice and big and fat and almost like a circle. And then we're just going to divide it in half this way, and we're going to divide it in half this way. So remember, press very lightly with your pencil. You want to be able to erase these lines later. These are just some guidelines for us. All right, so next we're going to draw another oval inside the oval. This one's going to be smaller, and it's going to fill up maybe 2/3 of this bottom section. So if I just kind of divide this up into 3 equal sections, 1, 2, 3, I want this oval to fill up just the bottom 2/3. Something like that. Okay? And then we're going to divide this oval also in half, just like that. All right, so now we're going to keep drawing ourselves some guidelines. These two sections, this half and this half, we're going to divide them in half again. So I'm going to very lightly draw a line here and very lightly draw a line here. And what those guidelines are for is to help us know where to put the eyes. So we're going to go straight up until we get to this line, and then we're going to draw our eyes. And our eyes are going to be football shape, like this, and they're going to be a little bit on an angle. So notice that it's going kind of in that direction. It's not perfectly horizontal on its side, and it's not angled too extremely, but it is going on an angle like this. Again, it's a football shape. Now, how big to make that eye? Well, we've talked in class before when we drew the human face about how you can only fit one eye in between your two eyes on the human face. With the cat, I think it's about 1.5. So if I use the tip of my pencil to kind of help me measure, I can see that maybe I can fit 1.5 eyes in between. Okay, so feel free to pause the video whenever you need to, but I'm just going to keep moving forward. Now we're going to make some more guidelines in this bottom oval. We're going to divide each of these sections in half again. So a little line there and a little line there. And then I'm going to add a line this way, dividing it in half again this way, like that. All right, so I have almost like a grid of boxes here. I'm making myself kind of like a grid. And right in this area, I'm going to draw a little triangle for the nose. So remember when I said trial and error, which means I tried and I failed and I had to do it again? This is one of the things I discovered was I have to keep the nose very small, very petite, and a little bit higher on the face, closer to the eyes, not too low. If you put it too low or make it too big, it'll look more like a bigger cat, or not a domestic house cat. It'll look more like a wild, like a bobcat or a tiger or something like that. All right, so now I'm just going to come straight down with a little line from the nose, and I'm going to curve to the left and join the oval there, and then I'm going to curve to the right and join the oval there. See how I did that? So we're just giving ourselves basic guidelines, basic shapes to do the structure of the cat's face. Okay, so just a couple more things we have to draw. Let's do the ears now. So find the center of the eye, come straight up, and right about here is where we're going to start the ear. And the ear is going to be basically like a triangle shape, like this, except for we don't want it to be so pointy at the top. We're going to round it like that. Make maybe a little bit more of a wavy line, and we can come in a little bit here too before we come back out. So there's like a little cutout there almost. Okay, so again, come straight up from the center of the eye. You have a basic triangle shape, and if you need to give yourself a guideline here so that your ears are about the same size, the same height, that might help. So just a basic triangle shape, but you're going to round the top of it like this, and then you're going to cut in a little bit. Okay. So we only need a couple more things before we add detail and shading. Let's add the pupils of the eyes. So the pupil of the eyes on the cat are more long and narrow. They're not circles like on the human eye. They're more like long, skinny ovals or almost ellipse shaped. Okay, so something like that. And before we start doing shading and details, let's add just a couple more things. Let's go back up to the ear. Let's add a little bit of a wavy line here to kind of show there's a little bit of skin or like a fold in the ear there on the cat. And I also want to bring this line down. So instead of this curvy line way up here, I want to flatten it out and bring it down, make it a little straighter like this. So I'm just going to erase this one and that one. Maybe give yourself a little bit of a wave here, not too much. And maybe flatten out these sides a little bit. Okay, at this point, before we do any more detail and shading, we want to erase all our guidelines. So we don't need this line anymore. We don't need any of these lines inside this small oval. So go ahead. Hopefully you pressed lightly enough, softly enough with your pencil that you can erase these without much of a problem. If you see a little bit of a shadow of the line, that's okay because we're going to do shading on here anyway. These lines, you can kind of keep the start of this line, but you don't want it to go that far down. So you can erase maybe half of it. You can erase the top half of that oval too. So you're left with this. Okay, you can add another little curved line down here. And now we're going to start to add detail with shading. So if you have some B pencils at home, that would be very helpful. I'm going to be using several different B pencils. I have an 8B here and a 6B and a 3B, and these are all different brands. So it doesn't matter what brand of pencil you have, but if you do have some B pencils, that would be great. If you don't, you can still shade it with your regular number 2 HB pencil. It's just going to be harder to get those darker values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through shading half the cat's face, and then I'll finish the other half of the cat's face using fast motion. So what I'm going to do first, actually I'll do the whole nose because it's kind of silly to do half the nose. Instead of those straight lines on the triangle of the nose, I'm going to make that into a wavy line like that. And I want to add some nostrils. So right here on the edge, you might think of it as half a heart, half of a heart shape. And you're going to want to shade that in very dark. And I'm just kind of rounding and softening the shape of the nose a little bit. I want a little line in the center there. And I also want to curve up a little bit on both sides like that. See how I did that? And then I'm going to soften it and fill it with some soft pencil with my blending tool. Now, if you don't have a blending tool at home, I am sending you a link to another video I did on how to make your own blending tool. So if you want to watch that and make your own blending tool, that would be great. All right, so there we have our nose. I'm going to add a little bit of dark shadow using this 8B pencil right underneath, right where the mouth starts here. And I'm going to soften that a little bit with my blending tool. I'm going to add some markings here, like little, almost like little circles, but I'm just kind of wiggling my pencil back and forth so that it's not a perfect circle. And that's where the whiskers are going to come out. And I'm going to soften that a little bit and blend it with my blending tool. Okay. On the eyes, before I shade in the eyes, I'm going to make a tiny little circle. See that tiny little circle? So that when I shade in the eye, I'm going to go around that circle. It leaves a little bit of reflected light in the cat's eye. And then I want this to be very dark around the cat eye. And the cat always has these markings that go out to the side. Let me show you on this other drawing I did. See how it goes out to the side? Another thing I learned, trial and error, is if you go down too soon or you go down too much with these markings, it's going to look a little funny. It's not going to look, it's going to look like something's a little wrong with your drawing. So make sure you go out to the side, and then if you want to go down, you can, but go out to the side first. Okay. And then I can use my blending tool. This is such dark pencil that I can just pick up some of the graphite from there to shade in the cat's eye. You're going to want to leave a little white underneath the eye, so I just left a little white there. And again, I have enough pencil on my blending tool. To add some soft shading there. This is actually one of the blending tools that I made. So again, if you want to learn how to make your own blending tool, go ahead and watch that other video. So I'm going to add some dark shadow with my 8B pencil right here on the inside of the ear. Notice that the darkest parts of the face on the cat are going to be the pupil, around the eye, the nostrils, here, this little shadowy part of the mouth, and inside the ear. And maybe these little whisker marks as well. So those are going to be the darkest parts. For the rest of the inside of the ear, maybe I would go back to a 3B or maybe even your regular HB pencil and just do some very light, soft shading there. And I probably want to add a little darker shading here. And I'm going to add some markings, maybe one down the center, maybe kind of almost like a V shape here, 2 curved lines here, maybe a little bit down the center and off to an upside down V like here. And of course we have this one going off to the side. And then I'm going to blend and soften with my blending tool. Now once you have a lot of graphite on your blending tool, you can just use that to add some very soft shading without even using your pencil to much of the cat's face. So that's just a very easy way to add some soft shading. Of course, you can always use your finger too. By the way, I am just drawing this cat from memory. I'm not using a reference picture. So my drawings are always a little bit better, more realistic looking or more accurate. If you're really wanting to be realistic, you might want to find yourself a picture of a cat, or you might have a cat. Maybe you have a pet cat at home. You can just look at your own cat. But that's always helpful to have a model or a reference picture when you're drawing something from real life. I want this to be a little bit heavier here. So again, right now I'm just drawing from memory, but might be helpful if you use a reference picture. So I'm just adding some darker shading. You'll notice I'm bouncing back and forth between my pencils. Sometimes I'm using my regular HB. Sometimes I'm using a 3B. Sometimes I'm using the 8B. And you always want to go in the direction of the hair or the fur. Always go in that direction, whatever direction it's going. So hopefully that makes sense. So if the fur or the hair is going this way, curving down, then with your pencil you want to curve down. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this line right here. And it's going to be very helpful if you have an erasing tool like this. I think I showed you this once before. I love this. It works like a pen, and it has a very small end to it, but it's an eraser. So you can use that to draw even some whiskers. When we want to do the whiskers, I'm going to start at these points. I'm going to do some whisker lines like this with my eraser. If you don't have one of these, you can just use, if you have a white eraser, you might even consider breaking it in half so that you have kind of a sharper edge point like that. So you can make some whisker lines. There's actually some up here too, like that. You might want to make some in the ear. And after I do it with my eraser, I'm actually gonna also add, let me use my regular HB for this. I'm gonna add some lines either just above it or below it. With my pencil. So I don't want to cover up the white line that I made with the eraser. I just want to make it stand out a little bit more by drawing a pencil line just above it or below it. See how I did that? And if your eraser makes too fat of a line, you can turn it into 2 whiskers. So, you know, let's say I got a really fat line like that. I could just add a couple pencil lines in there. Okay, so at this point, I think you get the idea. Of course, every cat is different. No 2 cats look alike. No 2 drawings are going to look alike. And but I'm going to finish the rest of this face and put it on fast motion, and you can watch me. I could keep messing with it, but I think about the only other thing I might want to do is soften this around here. Maybe I shaded it a little too dark. Maybe soften it a little bit. So just have fun, take your time. Feel free to pause this video whenever you need to. And like I said, oh, I forgot whiskers here. You might want to look up some pictures, reference pictures of cats to help you. And again, there's lots of different kinds of cats. This is just one kind of cat. So I hope you had fun drawing a cat with me. And remember, no 2 cats are alike. So every single drawing that you do of one is going to look different. And personally, I find drawing cats challenging. It's interesting how we all find, you know, certain things more challenging than others. You might think it's easy to draw a cat. I find it a little bit challenging, but it's good for us to practice, and I hope you had fun, and I can't wait to see your drawings. Have a great week, everybody.